Welcome to Alive to Thrive. We're not on this earth merely to survive, we're alive to thrive. We're honored today to have our guest, Roxy. She is the Executive Director of Crossroads4Recovery. Roxy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you very much, Mitchell, for inviting me. I'm Roxy Walnum. I'm the Executive Director for Crossroads, and Crossroads is a small residential treatment program in San Diego County, or in San Diego, in the Hillcrest area. It is the oldest women's recovery center for in San Diego, and the second oldest in the state of California. So we've been doing this for a very long time. Started out as a social model, which is along the 12-step AA lines then. As far as myself and how I started out, I have a master's degree in counseling and a business degree also. And I've been in the field of behavioral health, addiction for about 30 years now, a little over 30 years. And I've worked in a wide variety of things, especially the criminal justice population, along with addiction, mental health, and behavioral health. Homeless seems to all run together. I've been in various places. I worked for probation for a while where the client was there. Worked in residential and outpatient. I worked in medicated assisted treatment, MAT programs. I've worked in mental health thinking, I'll never see any of the clients there, but yes, they're there. They're homeless and on the streets. They're wherever we all see them. So I have an abundance of people that need help. And I think one of the best things I've been doing is I feel I save lives with the team that I work with. So that's a little about me.
That is so inspiring, and I love that you really are saving lives. And I from my background, and we were talking about this a little bit before the show started, part of the reason why I got into broadcasting and wanted to have talk show was to talk about the things, issues, and topics that aren't being addressed that need to be addressed. And going through high school, and since high school, I've lost numerous friends to overdoses, and you really are saving lives with the work that you're doing. And so you mentioned that part of the approach was stemmed from the 12-step program. So does Crossroads kind of model that, or how does it compare?
We absolutely, that is our core. We are what they call a social model, which started out with the 12-step concept. So that one alcoholic or one addict helping another, and reading and doing the 12 steps is vitally important to us. It's only been over the past few years as the field has transpired and become more evidence-based practices that they do, that we've incorporated with our 12-step basis, motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral therapists. Now we finally, most of my staff, at least half, came from working or getting clean and sober in Crossroads and have worked their way up into the different positions that they're in now. So we really are building from within, and including my own history too. I'll have 34 years in recovery in November. And so I have that lived experience. I paid as much for that lived experience as I did for that master's degree that I have over here, maybe more at times, but they've both been invaluable for us to use both concepts, that lived experience along with the best practices that we all know about too.
Well, congratulations on 34 years. That is phenomenal. And I think, and speaking, I struggled with addiction myself, especially when I was in high school. And 34 years is a huge accomplishment. And so congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I look back on it, and that was such a devastating time in my life. I actually went through the criminal justice system, and now I realize that that was my whole purpose in life, that that what was a devastating time then has become my mission in life, what I'm supposed to be doing, helping individuals, providing them with hope that it does get better, that it can change. And in turn, if I work with this one individual in front of me, what it tends to do is then there's kids and family and husbands and wives that start coming together, and it's in a community, because this is a community disease. This affects all of us. Equal opportunity disease, let me tell you. And I truly believe that this is my mission in life, is to be helping people, and that's my contribution to my community at large.
Absolutely. And it seems like, I mean, to have members, you mentioned that members of your staff are people who have graduated from the program and built into it. That is such a valuable asset to any program, because someone that's struggling with addiction, if they go to a counselor or they go to a therapist and that person has never experienced that is struggling with that themselves, or have never gone through withdrawals or had to deal with triggers, it's really hard to want to confide and to open up to those types of counselors, because they don't know what they're talking, they don't feel like they can identify and relate on that same level. And so having women who have succeeded and gone through it and shown that the program works, helping other women, help rise them up. Denzel Washington has a saying that once you reach success, to turn around, reach back and pull someone else up with you. And it seems like that's the same concept, that you're having women help women pull and rise up above out of addiction.
Absolutely, because when most of the people come into treatment, they don't look at it as an opportunity. A couple do, but the majority of them are either being forced by family, maybe just being homeless or being forced, and the criminal justice population. So what it tends to do is allow my staff to talk to them about what a great opportunity this is. And that if they're making this decision, stick around. Stabilization takes a little bit of time. In your head, the disease is always talking to you and wants you to leave. Oh, now I've rested for 3 days, let's leave, I'm all okay, And if my staff talks to them and lets them know that, no, stick around, my life's better because I stayed. So if you stay, I'm going to promise you it'll get better. And it really does help to have somebody who's gone through exactly the same experiences that you've had.
Absolutely. Do you feel like, where are the majority of the women that are coming to receive help? You mentioned that some are coming because of family or homeless situations. Do you feel like, where are most of the people finding you and are being brought to you from?
So to be honest with you, I've been doing this for so many years that back in the past, they used to be coming from just family and a few would come from probation and the criminal justice system. Now the addiction and the alcoholism has become so incredibly strong, and it's really taking people down, that a lot of our people are coming from the crisis house where they've been on suicide prevention, and then the locked psych units too, because that's just how sick the population is starting to get. Whether they had a mental health issue before they started using, what I'm seeing is people start using and it gets so bad they start getting the delusional effects of it. And so we're getting an awful lot, in my opinion, right now from the mental health system. So
yeah, do you feel like at the core of addiction, do you feel like the best way of approaching it? I know that a lot of it's like from trauma based, or people going through traumatic experiences. It can be inherited from, their parents being an alcoholic, and then it stems that way. Do you feel like in the more recent years that, like, for the instance, the pandemic, did it rise up?
Yes.
Did you see a rise of cases during that period of time?
Yes, absolutely saw a rise of cases. And I'm not even sure if the cases are coming to light yet, because the pandemic allowed us to learn how to isolate ourselves in the home. And that is exactly what the disease wants us to do. It's always talking to us. It's always telling us nobody will know. We can do this just one more time, and, fooling ourselves, and it'll get different. And it really, in my opinion, I tell the women this, would like us just to stay by ourselves in our home and shoot drugs and smoke heroin and drink alcohol till we kill ourselves. It's absolutely a suicide mission. So the isolation, I think, from the COVID is still, we haven't seen the effects totally from it yet. But along with the addition of fentanyl, now we've got the perfect storm, because with the isolation and the shame and guilt, we want to hide all that. We start with heroin, going into fentanyl, and now we're killing ourselves. The amount of deaths that are happening are incredible. I used to, early on in my career, talk to people, and rarely did you know somebody that had died, and if they had, it was from alcoholism and they were an older relative or something. Nowadays, if I go talk to a young person and I ask them, do you know of anybody who's died of this disease? Oh, my uncle, or I've had 3 boyfriends die overdose. And it's just amazing to me how kind of normalized in the fentanyl and the addiction area that's become. That is not a fear at all to anybody. It's just the norm, and that could happen to me, is what they say. And really, it would be good if that happened to me, is how hopeless the individuals have become. It's very scary, and it's become such a family disease. When I've worked inside the jail system for many years, and I would have a grandmother in one dorm cell, the granddaughter over here, and the mother over here, and maybe 1 or 2 of them wants to get help. Other than that, they really don't. And so a lot of times it's the younger daughter that wants the help, and who was raised in total addiction, so really has no life skills at all, no problem solving skills, anything like that. The solution to everything is using drugs. And the insanity that drugs brings, the chaos of divorces and family relationships and police and all of that, that's a norm in their lives. I live in the rural part of San Diego, and that's how it is in the East County. And it's really difficult. And you talked a little earlier about hereditary and stuff like that. I believe, yes, there's some hereditary stuff to it. There's also some environmental stuff that goes along with it. I definitely know it's a brain disease, and it's talking to us, and it shows itself in that obsessive compulsive behavior. But it's starting to become like a lifestyle. And there was something I wanted to say, and I forgot what it was.
That's all right. I'm sure it'll come to you. It always does. It always does.
I know it'll come back to me, because it's an important point that I, really want to make, and I can't remember what it is now, but that's okay. But I know what it was. Hang on a second.
There it is.
So the thing of it is when clients come to us, because before they used to come, I knew addiction or alcohol, whatever the problem was, and those are all symptoms. So it's addiction to me, or a substance abuse disorder. But they also come with mental health. And now that is an expectation too. So some days I'll be dealing with trying to get them clean and sober, and the next day they'll have all these psych symptoms, and that's when we're dealing with mental health symptoms. So you have to measure what you're dealing with that day. But the expectation is the majority of our clients have both, and we have to make sure we treat them, because if we're not treating them both at the same time, they're not going to get the help. So there you go.
Yeah,
you can edit that part out.
Well, and it's interesting because, as you mentioned, it's like you have a daughter in one cell, and another family member, these toxic cycles. Excuse me. So they're raised in this dysfunctionality, and that's their norm, is watching their parent use substances to solve their problems, and they're not taught the coping skills, and then they rise up into it. But on the one hand, they've seen the destruction that it's caused their parents' life. And so then that might build in them themselves the desire to want to change because they've seen where that road goes. One thing that I recognize, like when I was in school, was they had the DARE program, and they would say, don't do drugs, and this is what will happen to your body if you do drugs. But one thing that I think that I wish there would have been more of is that they taught our youth, and what I would like to see more in schools is teaching our youth the coping skills of how to deal with trauma, or how to deal with death, and how to deal with, you know, when you're confronted with friends and peer pressure, how to approach those situations. Instead of just saying, no, here's the negative consequences, actually instilling in them the coping skills of how to get out of those situations.
You know, it's interesting because you think about the child who has addiction going on, or just alcoholism going on in his house, and he's at school and his teacher's telling him these things. When he knows this is happening at home, how really is he going to talk to his family about that when the teacher is given a totally different message? It is conflict, and nowadays in school, there's a lot of trauma that happens in school. How unfortunate is that? You know, this addiction covers everything. I used to coach and Little League teams, and I had a other coach that was helping me, and I was the manager, and we had a kid that was coming late all the time. And so the coach was making this kid run. Okay, you have to run. You run laps, you run laps. And I was there, and after a couple of days, a week or so, I started saying, wait a minute, why is this kid coming late? Well, then I saw the parents, and I said, oh, this is why. So I had to tell the coach, we either need to go pick this kid up, because I'm not willing to keep punishing him because he can't, his parents are not responsible enough to get him there. And the coach and I had conflict over that, but it worked really well after I talked the coach into you picking him up and I'll take him home. And that's just how we played it, because I was just grateful the kid got to come to Little League. So most people don't recognize it, but if you look around at the elementary schools and places and you see the addicted parent kind of hanging on the corner waiting for their kids to come in. And those are the ones that are lucky enough to have their parents coming, trying to get them and help them. So
yeah, I think that's so important to be able to recognize the underlying reason behind what's actually happening to the child. And I just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to KNSJ 89.1 FM. This is Alive to Thrive. Our guest today is Roxy Walnum, and we're talking about addiction. And she is the executive director of Crossroads4Recovery. And to go back to what we were discussing, the underlying issues is such an important thing, and understanding the underlying cause, because I think that a lot of times in our society, especially when we see people who are homeless and suffering from addiction, or, you know, seeing our youth struggling with addiction, we're focusing more on the behavior at hand and not the underlying issue behind it. And if they dealt with personal trauma in their youth, or if they were abused, or what those underlying issues are, and really bringing those to the surface and addressing those, because I think that that's really the key to solving addictive behavior, is pulling up and bringing that trauma to the surface, working through it in a very positive, emotional way, and then pressing on past that. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely believe that trauma is a major factor in what addiction and how people handle it. I know that there's and I'm going to kill this, I'm not good at all the names, but I'm going to talk about it. We use an adverse childhood experience, the ACE, which is a small 10 questions, 1-page assessment that the client does. And it talks about childhood experiences before the age of 18. This was developed by a doctor here in San Diego out of Kaiser, and Kaiser is a big system. So he had studied many, tens of thousands of patients and gave them this study. And the research shows that this has been a big thing for Obesity is where it really started. Then he saw how it was affecting addiction and mental health issues, high blood pressure, heart disease, all types of different things. So this one-page assessment gives you a number of 1 to 10, and these different things that happen before the age of 18. And what you work towards is resilience, and talking about resilience and talking about how we can come back from these different experiences. I know one of the questions is, and it's been a while, I am a score of a 9, and that's really high. But has somebody ever been incarcerated in your family? Those are the type. Was there a divorce in your family? Those are things that cause trauma and rewires the brain. And so it's really important. I want the women to know at Crossroads, what is my ACE score and how resilient am I to come out of that? And when I tell them, I'm a high 9, that's high, but look at what I've done to my life. I've become this, I went to school, I've done all this stuff, and it's changed what's happened to me. So I think trauma and our experiences before the age of 18 and on into our lives is very, very important. Most of us think trauma comes from post-acute withdrawals, or not post-acute, but PTSD and stuff from wars and things. What is a traumatic experience to me might not be traumatic to you, but it doesn't matter. It's traumatic to me, and it's caused me to have a real negative reaction to it. So, people going to jail, those are huge things. Divorces cause trauma in life. Death of people, even death of an animal can be a traumatic experience for somebody. And we have to acknowledge that. And it does rewire the brain. So
it really does. And
yes.
I think that what happens is, and I know this from personal experience and seeing it from a lot of my friends, is like that they'll have that traumatic experience and then they don't deal with it properly. They bury it and they start burying those emotions, and emotions buried alive never die. And it just festers. And then, as we were discussing earlier, there's that guilt and that shame that's associated with addiction. And so people lock themselves away while they're using until they completely isolate themselves, until slowly it's a death sentence. And in I played baseball with a few brothers, and the one had committed suicide, and the guilt from that perpetuated substance use until the other one ended up committing suicide as well. There were 3 brothers, and the other brother, it turns suicide turns families into black holes because of the guilt of knowing that was something that you could have done, or not handling that that guilt properly. And what do you feel like the best ways of dealing with trauma is?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. First, just identifying it, and wow, that's
Sorry, that was a heavy question.
Yeah, there's that question that, so much is around that, just acknowledging it and also going into therapy right away. I've seen some great stuff with the rapid eye movement stuff. I had a really good therapist work with a kid that I had known for years who had killed somebody in a car accident when he was 18, and now he was in his 30s and had not driven since then. And they did therapy together for a year long with the rapid eye movement. And the next thing you know, he's gotten his license and things have changed. So whatever, it's acknowledging it, definitely not stuffing it. It's kind of, in my opinion, like addiction, recovery is a daily process. You've got to continue every day to be working on it. You can't just, oh, I graduated this program and I'm done. No, you need to work on it all the time. And so I think the same with trauma. If we acknowledge it and try to get the help that we need and really build a support system around you, that you can actually call somebody and say, this is what I'm thinking and feeling. Help me with this, So
Yeah.
that's, and I know medication, all types, whatever medical help that you need is worth doing.
I
So,
keep putting my mic on mute and it's not working. I apologize. But yes, I think that you're absolutely right. Is first being able to confront and being humble enough to be like, hey, I'm
I need help.
acknowledging the trauma and then reaching out for help with that trauma and voicing that concern. One thing that I noticed as I went through my battle with addiction was that you talked about it briefly earlier about the reprogramming your brain and the neural networking. And I think that there's these mental traps that you get caught in where using alcohol as an example, it's okay, well, the store is going to close. I won't use it right now, but I'll buy it and maybe I'll have it for later. Or there's these little traps that get set up in our mind of, okay, well, I'll hang out with this group of friends, but I'm not going to drink. I'll just be the designated driver. And so I think it's being aware of the traps in advance. And for me, it was psychologically recognizing, okay, I know that I'm going into this, I'm going by the liquor store, or I'm going by this location, or I'm going to avoid those groups of friends altogether. But it was really the psychological factor of acknowledging the traps that are there and reprogramming my mind. And so I started listening to motivational videos and like spiritual things. I attribute my sobriety to God, to be perfectly honest with you. I know that I wouldn't be sober today if it wasn't for the help of God. And that's just speaking for me personally. But working through acknowledging that those traps do exist and being aware of it, because otherwise you continue to fall into that trap over and over and over again. And if you're not acknowledging the psychological aspect of it, that you're literally reprogramming your mind. You have to reprogram your thought processes, because every time we have a thought and that neuron fires, it literally leaves an imprint, just like a river leaves a groove in a valley. Our thought processes leave these grooves in our neural pathways, and we have to redirect those thought processes. And groups like Crossroads4Recovery and being surrounded by people that are helping support you while you do that, I think is so vital.
Yes, I totally agree. I say that what we tell ourselves is the disease protecting itself. It's crazy how we can justify and rationalize in our head the continued behavior that we were doing. And it's different for different people. I remember meeting, and along the way, I've interviewed many people about more assessments that I've done. I remember assessing a woman, and she told me that she never went to the same liquor store in her neighborhood. She always found different liquor stores. And I was like, why? I loved my liquor store. I went there 3 or 4 times. They were my friends. What do you mean? And she said, oh no, she didn't want people to think she was an alcoholic. And see, that never dawned on me, but that wasn't how my disease was protecting itself, but that was how hers is. And, the things our brain tells us, you're not worth anything, you're worthless, you don't, deserve any of that, all the stuff that we always, and I think normal people have this negative self-talk that they have to overcome too, is really difficult. I tell people that if my friends told me what my head said, they wouldn't be my friends. But yet 24/7, I entertain and listen to this brain, and it's okay. But if it was a friend, I would have gotten rid of them a long time ago. So it's very, very difficult. There definitely is a whole attitude and adjustment and a change of what we're thinking in order to come into recovery. Looking at treatment as not a punishment or a bad thing, looking at it as an opportunity, and that I've made the decision to do this opportunity. as opposed to my husband's forced me to come here, or, I lost my kids and my social worker's making me come here. I've made a decision, and I tell the ladies, do you have a problem? Well, yes. Well, then take this as an opportunity. This is your decision. It doesn't matter who brought you here. You've made that decision, and you're going to stay here and take this opportunity to change. So right down to the first of it, and then you start on that self-worth part of it, that they deserve better. I always leave women that are deciding to maybe leave treatment early, or they don't need this anymore. I always say, I'm leaving you with one question. And I said, and you don't even have to answer it. I want to know why I think you're worth more than what I see you doing to yourself. And I tell them, don't answer it, just think about it. Because that's really important. It's the enemy, and it's batting against us, let me tell you. It absolutely is trying to go against us. So you talked about the family and the brothers and the suicide stuff. I've actually had the same situation several times. I know a client I had, he told me him and his dad had a death pact together, and they ended up making it come through in the end, because the dad OD'd first, and then the kid kind of followed right afterwards. And it's just stuff like that. That's how cunning, baffling, and powerful the disease is. And that's what it talks about in the AA Big Book. That book was written 100 years ago. And believe it or not, what they're doing out here in San Diego with UCSD and the brain waves and stuff, they're actually proving everything that Carl Jung and Dr. Silkworth talked about in the AA Big Book, but they couldn't see the brain. They knew it was in the brain and knew that there had to be a spiritual solution to this. And I too believe, God and my recovery are my two things. I'm not sure which. I'd have never got to recovery, I know, without God's help. And I learned everything I know about God in recovery. So I don't care if it's your creator, whatever it is, get a higher power. There is something greater than us, and not only greater than us, but greater than our brain disease that we have going on. That's the important part. And it's a struggle every day. So.
Yeah. And it goes by many names, but there definitely is something out there that is higher than us, that loves us and cares for us and wants what's best for us. And I truly believe that each of us have a purpose that we are on this earth to fulfill, that we all have gifts and abilities and talents that we can help make this world a better place. And that if we just asked for help, if we just surrendered ourselves and just asked and opened ourselves up to that higher power, whatever that is to each individual person, it is there with open arms, ready to receive us. It's just a matter of humbling ourselves and being willing to ask for that help.
Yes, get out of being the controller, in our lives. Yes, I definitely believe that too. And that's why I know that my passion for this field that I'm working in is my destiny. That's why I was put here. That is all of my, first 26 years in life was all about getting the experience I needed to do what I'm doing today. And I truly believe it. When you talk about what you're doing now, I can tell that you're passionate about that. I run into people that are doing things that I think, wow, that's interesting, but you see the passion in them. If you're not living your passion, you're not following your dreams, it's much better thing other than just working in life, to be following your passion. So.
For sure. And, all those years ago that me personally was locked in a bathroom. This was before YouTube and the internet and all of that. Mm-hmm. I listened to talk radio, and I was locked away, struggling with my own demons and battling my addiction. But I was listening to talk radio, and I had this goal that someday I would have a talk show and that I would help make a difference and that I would overcome my addiction so that I could get out there and make a difference in the world. And so that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about it and why I called the show Alive to Thrive, because I don't believe that we're not on this earth to suffer. We should be alive to thrive. And really a huge part of that is a changing in our thought processes. And a big thing that I really liked and loved about the AA program is the prayer that they say, God, help me accept the things that I cannot change. Help me have the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And just that one paragraph is so powerful.
Yes, that was the first prayer I really learned how to pray. And after being in addiction and having my life with chaos and stuff for so long, I remember calling my sponsor, Sue, at the time and saying, Sue, my roommates say I really don't have any problems, that my life isn't, and what's wrong with me? Why I don't have any problems? And she says, well, Roxy, what are you praying? And I said, well, the serenity prayer. And she goes, well, that's what you got, is some serenity. And, that's, I'm like, wow, okay. I didn't know what grace was till I got to AA. And years later, I used to have guys always say, sober by the grace of God. And I'm thinking, well, what does that mean? And so I've learned a lot in that area. It's much more freeing than me trying to control everything that happens in my life, and learning to accept things. I know a lot of people come into treatment and they say, I'm fighting, I'm in the battle, I'm trying to, and I'm like, the battle, the way to win the battle is to surrender and just come to some acceptance. And that's so hard when all these years we've been fighting not to pick up, not to drink and use one more time, and doing it one more time, and having those around us saying, well, if you would just say no, don't you have any willpower? This isn't about that at all. And, if we could say no, we would be the first to say no. But we just can't, because we're in this emotional battle in our head, and it's killing us. And that's why I tell people, drinking and using is not a social thing for those of us. It is a suicide mission. And it's very difficult to get a kid that comes in with either a methamphetamine or a fentanyl or both addiction, and they come in, we get them clean and sober, and they go home to a mother and dad who are social drinkers at home, that are functioning and working and everything else, and just say, well, here, can't you just have a beer with dad while we're working in the garage together? And of course, the kid's like, oh, that's not my choice, but okay. And then by nighttime, they're off looking for their choice, and the family wonders why. Abstinence is what we need, period. So
it really is. And what I noticed was each substance almost fed the next substance.
Yes.
It's like you may be struggling with alcohol, and I've seen this with numerous of my friends back in the day when I was in that lifestyle, and witnessed it myself, but you drink and you party all night and you wake up with a hangover, and it's like, oh, well, how do you solve that? With painkillers, or drink the next morning, and that's how you really become an alcoholic. But my friends would call that the breakfast of champions, is to wake up in the morning and take shots and do painkillers. And then as you go through the day, it's like you end up making the same poor choices because you're altering your state of mind. And so right out of the gate, you get stuck in this dysfunctional, toxic cycle, and it ends up perpetuating more negative decisions. And then you wake up the next morning with all this regret and shame from everything that happened the night before, and you're right back doing more substances. And for me, I've been debating on sharing this, but I'm going to open up a little bit. So I got addicted to painkillers when I was 15, and I broke my ankle skateboarding.
Yep.
and I had never touched a substance before that, never drank alcohol, never had a desire for any of it. In high school, I started hanging out with the wrong friends, and they started teaching me, oh, well, you don't swallow it. There's other ways of doing it. And then I got involved with drinking, and it all just spiraled from there. But the damage that it did to my sinus, and even after I had cleaned up my act and changed my life, I had a sinus infection. And because of all the damage in the scar tissue, it actually created a rare type of scar tissue that heals abnormally, and it fused my palate shut. And so I slowly lost my ability to breathe through my nose until I just couldn't breathe through my nose anymore. And so I went to the doctor, and they put a camera back there, and they're like, it's fused shut. And so I went to 4 different specialists. It was such a rare condition. They didn't know what kind of surgery to do on it. And I didn't want to be a guinea pig. So I just learned to live with it. And so for 6 years, I did not have the ability to breathe through my nose. I could not smell, and I could not really taste anything for 6 years.
Wow.
And so when it comes to being able to smell the roses, or to be able to have those types of little things like tasting Christmas dinner with your family, I had all of that taken from me. And even though I had changed my life, I still was having to deal with the negative consequences of my actions. And so I had surgery. As you can tell, I can breathe again through my nose. I can smell the roses, but I've never brought that up on any of my shows. I felt inspired to share that with our listeners, that there are serious consequences that happen from abusing your body, and that you need to treat yourself with more respect, that whatever pain or whatever trauma that you're struggling with on the inside, it's worth doing the work to work and deal with that trauma in a positive way, because the negative consequences of not dealing with it in a positive way have serious damaging effects. And I, by the grace of God, was able to come out of it and come out alive, because there's so many of my friends that didn't. And I just wanted to share that out there, that it is so much better to do the work and to work through whatever you're struggling with, whatever dark moment that you're going through in your life. My mom, and I've heard this saying, my great grandmother used to say, it's always darkest before the dawn. And whatever trial we're going through in our lives, it's always, the sun is about to rise. We just need to push through it and rise to the other side.
Yes, I totally agree. Your story is very common, of having a skateboard accident at the age of 15, a sports accident, something like that happening at a young age through Pop Warner, Little League, or whatever, high school ball, and then having a surgery, getting on painkillers, and that starts the addiction from there. And, there's times when I think about the big picture in the world, the pharmaceutical companies. It's kind of like the tobacco company and the alcohol industry. I remember in the, I think, 80s, when they quit doing hard liquor and liquor advertisements on TV. But now all of a sudden I'm seeing all these advertisements coming back in. But that, when I start looking at the financial gain of these different companies and the problems that it's causing each and every community, and it becomes very overwhelming in what I do. I think, man, am I fighting a battle that's hopeless? When really the only thing I have to give my clients is hope. So I can't go there. I got to get back and say, you know what? Yes, the pharmaceutical companies and everything has caused major, major problems in our community. But what I need to do is step back and just take that one individual at a time. And I tell God every day on my way to work, God, I know my best work is ahead of me. So please bring me somebody today that I can help, that I can help. And So that helps just the way I'm looking at what I do, because yeah, big pharma is a interesting subject. And we shouldn't, and then don't talk to me about the criminal justice system. My last self-actualization, that Maslow has that hierarchy of power thing. My last self-actualization is I really want to be part of justice reform. So not only have I worked in treatment and stuff for many, many years, I've also been the director of the drug courts in the East County out here in San Diego for many years, and a member of I sat on the California Association for Collaborative Courts, and it's a board that helps educate and support, and we're kind of the leadership of the collaborative courts all over California. And I also just became a National Drug Court Association facilitator. So I'm going to be training people on the drug court concept all around. So I feel like I am part of the criminal justice reform. Our jails are full of people that are great individuals. They just are so lost in addiction and mental health that they just need resources and the opportunity to meet some people that they can, learn to trust and allow them to make mistakes and teach them how to stop drinking and using. So.
Yeah, they just need to be given the tools and the proper tools. Absolutely. And that is so incredible, all the work that you're doing. And it's what a difference that you're making and what purpose that's given your life. I just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to KNSJ 89.1 FM. This is Alive to Thrive. Our guest today is Roxy Walnum, and she's the executive director of Crossroads4Recovery. We have about 13 minutes left of the show. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation of really getting into the depths of the causes of addiction and different ways of approaching escaping it and overcoming it. Let's hear more about what Crossroads4Recovery is doing. I know that you have some upcoming events. There's one coming up in July that's Music Under the Stars. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I happen to have a really great board of directors, and they are putting on two big events coming up. Music Under the Stars is happening here out in the East County. We've got three of the national music up and coming people that have won some awards. It's at my president's house. So we're outside, and it's in the country, and we're going to have about 150 people there. We're going to be raffling off some stuff, and it is our major fundraiser. So if anybody's in the area and would like to join us, if you get on the Crossroads website and see Music Under the Stars, you're welcome to join us. It is our first fundraiser of the year, and our second one is our major fundraiser, and I believe it's in September. I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me, but it's called Pasta and Jazz, and this has been a fundraiser that Crossroads has been doing for many, many years. And of course, we have pasta, we have jazz going on. There'll be several baskets of different things that people will bid on. So we'll be raising money. We've got a great MC that's there. We'll have some of our women in the house there, and also some of the staff that can share with everybody about what we're doing. Crossroads is a nonprofit, so we do live off of all of our donations that we get in the community. So if you see our website and would like to get on there and donate some funds, I really would appreciate it. And, give us a call. Could I give our number, or what should I do?
Of course. Yeah, you can give your phone number and the website. And I think the more people that can hear ways to find a way to recovery, the better.
Now I'm going to so Crossroads' phone number, I believe, is 619-296-1151. And if you got on and look for Crossroads and then the number 4 and recovery.org, that's going to take us to our website. And you'll see all of our information there. I'm pretty free with giving out my number. It's 619-972-9672. I talk to, families and clients all over the United States. So if you ever needed any help, please don't hesitate to call. Call either the local numbers that you might have, maybe some behavioral health numbers in the area. I know that both Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and Cocaine Anonymous, and even Gambling Anonymous all have local numbers that you can call and reach out and get some help from there. And people will come. But it is important. The most important is to reach out for help. And I want you all to realize that recovery is a process. It's not a one-time shot. People rarely get it in one time. In fact, SAMHSA, the National Organization for Mental Health and Substance Abuse, actually says it's 7 attempts at treatment is the average. So 7 times. And I know a lot of times when families get their loved one to a treatment center, they think, oh, this is it. This is all, I'm done. This is it. And that's not the reality of things. That really isn't the reality. And so please, know that this is a daily struggle for everybody. Even those of us who have 30 some years, I can make a wrong decision today. I have people all the time say, well, Roxy, don't you want to at least have a glass of wine with us? No, you wouldn't like me if I had a glass of wine. I wouldn't be your friend. But so anyway, get help. That's the main thing. If we're not asking for help, we're at one of two places in our life. We're either in the problem or we're in the solution. And every day, if we're at least going towards a solution and we're working on some form of recovery, that's a good process, because going backwards is not. It's killing ourselves. If we look at it like this is a suicide mission right over here. So anyway, I love what I'm doing at Crossroads. I've only been there, going on 5 months, 4 or 5 months now. It was one of those things that God put me in a place that I was beyond my wildest dreams. And it's been an incredible ride and still have a lot more to do. So I'm very excited about the new things that are going to be happening at Crossroads and what we're going to be bringing to the community of San Diego for sure.
I think it's so phenomenal, the work that you're doing and just your enthusiasm and just you as a person. I really feel like you are truly fulfilling your purpose. And just a few questions about Crossroads. So if someone has a loved one, I know that you treat women. If they have a loved one that's struggling, say it's a sister or a mother, what is the best way for them to get them in touch with you? Would they call you and say, hey, I have my sister who's struggling with addiction, and set up an appointment to bring her in? Or what's the best way to navigate that?
So first of all, we take people that are 18 and above, and we also take people that are on Medi-Cal, is what we call it here in San Diego. So we don't take per se private insurances. We only take government funded insurance is what we take. And it would be best to call our 619-296-1151 number. You'll talk to one of my counselors. They'll do, and not so much the family member. We want to talk to the individual because we do a screening with them over the phone. And that way we can ask them some questions about, what they need. We might not have the services that they need, but we'll give them a referral. But if we do seem that it's going to be a good fit, that's when we actually set up an appointment to come in and do an intake and stuff with them. One of the things about family members, and as I know how bad family members want us to get help, almost if the addict would work twice, just as hard as the parent, will be in good shape. But that's not usually the case. Usually the family member or the friend is trying harder than the alcoholic and addict. So we're trying to empower the person that needs the help.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. I was just wondering for those, just because that was my next part that I was going to ask you about is the addict themselves. So a woman who's struggling with addiction, she calls your phone number and just to kind of like walk through the process, because I think that that's a big part that people struggle with overcoming and getting help is not knowing what the processes are. So in the last few minutes of the show, I just kind of wanted to outline that. So the person, the woman who wants help with it, they call you, you do an over the phone assessment.
We do an over the phone talking about both their, substance use, because sometimes they might need detox, and which is important. We are not a medical detox, but we do have the ability to get that person started in a medical detox before they get here. They might need mental health treatment first. They might even need physical help with abscesses, and some people don't take care of broken legs or different things like that while they're out there. So we have to assess them, so when they get to us, then we can start them in our quarantine process. Right now with COVID, we do like a 5-day quarantine and things, but we need to make sure that they're a good fit for what services we have to offer. And some might need to go to maybe more of a medicated assisted treatment first to get stable there, and then they can bring those medications with them. We do have a doctor, but not a doctor who really treats our individuals. So I do have therapists on board and counseling staff too. So
that's wonderful. So yeah, that makes you did a really good job of explaining that. And so just I can imagine with the wide range of addictions and things out there that it's important to know exactly what the person's struggling with, how best to address them, what stage they need to be in order to best assist them. So that makes a lot of sense.
We're not a good place for perinatal women. So if there's a woman that's pregnant or something, or needs to have her kids there, we don't have that ability. We're actually right now only a 12-bed facility. We will be expanding this either in August or September to 22 beds. But right now we're a small women's residential, which makes it nice because I tell them, welcome home. You are home. This is your new home. Okay. And we become a family with them.
I can see that being a highly beneficial, because the relationships that are formed are a huge part of that recovery process, and really those bonds that are made, and really having them be there to help lift each other up, and what they can learn from each other is something that's invaluable when it comes to overcoming different types of trauma, or being able to identify with different past things to be able to confide and work together. And I think that that's part of the reason why the AA program has been so successful, is being in a group setting that people can really open up and share and help lift each other up.
Yes, yes. And our AA community in our area in NA is really supportive of what we're doing too. So please, if you would like to support us, again, it's Crossroads4Recovery.org.
That's fantastic. We have about 30 seconds left of the show, but I just wanted to thank you again, Roxy. Ever since I got involved with radio and broadcasting, I have wanted to do a show focused on addiction and to share a little bit of my story. And so I am very grateful that I had the opportunity to share my story and to learn more about Crossroads for Recovery and ways that women can go and receive the resources and the support they need.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was a God thing that we got together. I'm telling you, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep me in mind if you need more. I've got other resources I could share with you. Okay.
Absolutely.
For your show.
That would be wonderful.
So,
we will definitely, I think it was a total God thing that we connected, and the way that everything is aligned, and everything happens for a reason. And so I will definitely be in touch, and we can work together going forward.
Great. Thanks, Mitchell. Appreciate it.
And thank you all for tuning in to Alive to Thrive. Remember, we are not on this earth merely to survive. We are alive to thrive. God bless you all, and we will see you next week.
Now, do you take us off?
Yep, I'm just signing.